Hello, everyone. This is Duke Sayer, and this is the Man Club podcast. Today, we have someone who I'm not just super excited, I am overly excited because there are very few people out there who I've met on my journey in the personal development world, in the spiritual development world, who live so much of what they teach and have lived and experienced so much and are actually able to teach it and talk about it and get into the science as well as the experience and really just give the real shit that people can actually listen to and understand how they can implement it and know that it's some truth, not just something which has been piecemealed from a book. And the stuff I'm talking about is remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming. And today we have Todd Acamesis, Consciousness Explorer. Todd, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, Duke? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I am excited. We've got a lot of questions, a lot of people wanting to know the nitty and gritty, as well as some of the more advanced stuff. So first of all, Todd, do you want to give people a bit of a snapshot as to what it is you do? And what at your base, at Pandora Spa, and just overall, your day-to-day?
Okay, yeah, great. All right, well, Pandora Spa is a futuristic mind spa, which is dedicated to the exploration of consciousness and human potential. At the heart of the spa, we have some technology that we've developed ourselves, which is called Pandora Star. It's a very unique light entrainment technology, which is basically, it's a flickering light device, and it will guide your brain to altered and expanded states. My business partner's name is Jimmy Simpson. Great guy. You can find him on Facebook. So, we sat down and developed this thing. He's the engineer. I've done a lot of the programming of creating sessions and using my knowledge of all the stuff that I explore to put into the programming side of it, such as remote viewing, lucid dreaming, out-of-body exploration. So back in 1999, I was trained by another remote viewer. So learned that. I've been doing it for about 17, almost 18 years now. Self-taught myself how to do astral projection and lucid dreaming, things that, I used to do as a child naturally. I've had to sort of retrain myself and as an adult to be able to consciously explore, these areas again. I also do brainwave entrainment research. So I learn as much as I can about different brainwave states, what's beneficial, what's not, and again, use that in our day-to-day sort of work and personal practice. So
really starting from the for beginners, Todd, because some people who are listening to this podcast are like, get to the juicy stuff. I want to know how to be better at astral traveling and whatever else. And then there's some people who are like, what the hell is brainwave entrainment? So give us like the real basics of what you do. And, with your machine, I've experienced it myself. Where does that sit on the line from, say, personal development, brainwave entrainment, kind of getting more into theta brainwaves, understanding that maybe more of a spiritual journey. And then you've got people obviously using plants to get into altered states, people who are a lot more gifted as healers. Can you give us like a little snapshot of all of that stuff and where it kind of sits and what is the ordering and what type of people might experience on their journey and what kind of comes next?
Okay. So every state of mind, every state of being, every state of, whether that's, well-being, whether you're, sort of have some sort of illness, everything has a frequency state. So our light can go anywhere from 0.1 hertz, which is the lowest recorded brainwave state, called epsilon. That's a sub-delta frequency. So lower than delta, which is typically people associate delta with deep sleep. Or maybe if you're a very practiced meditator, then you can also meditate within the delta state and still remain consciously aware, which is very challenging to do. It takes years of practice, but it can be done. So our light can go anywhere from 0.1 hertz, which is epsilon. Epsilon is probably the best description for it, is if you think about an Indian yogi who can achieve a suspended animated state, where you could barely detect their heart rate or respiration. So that's the lowest recorded brainwave state. Then we can go upwards to delta, to theta being the typical state for meditation and sleep, in addition to delta for sleep. We also go upwards to alpha, which is a relaxed, focused state. It's the state we sort of most naturally entrained to through evolution. The moment that we close our eyes, that's a signal from the body to the brain to say, okay, I'm shutting down, I'm starting to relax, and then the brainwave will shift to the alpha state very, very easily. So if people are feeling depressed, if they're feeling anxious or stressed, through repeated practice of some breathing techniques and stuff that people can learn, and they can enter that alpha state, and they can start to shift away from those other sort of feeling states. It does take practice, and everything we teach is a step-by-step process. It's not something we expect people to achieve in one go. If we go up higher in the brainwave states, then we've got beta waves starting around the 13 hertz mark. And 13 hertz is basically just saying, okay, if I switch on a light switch, let's say 10 times on and off in 1 second, then that's like your brain firing electrically from like the back to the front 10 times in a second would be a 10 hertz alpha wave. So that's just a basic description of it. So going higher up, so our normal waking brainwave state is beta waves, and if we go up into the higher range of beta waves, sort of upwards of 20 hertz and even into 30 hertz, eventually we get to gamma waves. Gamma waves are usually start at around 36, 38, 40 hertz. It's not quite exact science on that one yet, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. And then you can go up even higher to hyper gamma, lambda frequencies. Lambda is currently the current highest recorded brainwave state at 200 hertz. That's like 200 times switching a light switch on and off per second. It's pretty fast. And what we can do with the light with all those frequency states is we can use it for well-being. So if somebody, like I said, is stressed, anxious, or depressed, then we can manage that with the light. If somebody's feeling jet lagged, we can help them address that. We can use the light for seasonal affective disorder. It's like 36,000 lumens at its brightest, which is well sufficient. And there's even been studies to show that flickering light can actually be more effective than constant light for seasonal affective disorder. And at the moment, that's every seasonal affective disorder lamp out there uses constant light. And the reason is that when you flash light, so you're using flickering light, your eyes have time to adjust in between the flashes, so it can then take on more information. So it's pretty cool stuff. We can then use the light for brain sort of development, so cognitive enhancement. The 40 hertz range, gamma, as an example, if you were to use our light for a period of about a month on the gamma programs, say 15 minutes a day, you'd probably expect about an 8% bump in brain processing speed in that amount of time. So it can be used for that. And then, of course, for exotic states, we know that lucid dreaming, as an example, is a cocktail of brainwave frequencies. Lucid dreams don't take place in regular REM sleep, where we have, sort of unconscious dreaming. It's actually a hybrid state of REM. So we know the frequencies associated with that. So we can actually help people induce lucid dream states with the lamp, as well as we use it for other practices. I use it in my out-of-body exploration workshops, for astral projection purposes. It's just learning what frequency states do what, and then to be able to hold people at those states, at those frequencies reliably.
And is it a case that once you've used your machine, or once you've gone into more altered states that you're not used to, you then get a reference point that it's then easier to do it when you're by yourself and you have the feeling for it?
Yeah, it's just basic neuroplasticity. You're teaching your brain to strengthen neural pathways, and whenever we start doing something new like meditation, we start creating new neural pathways, or we're strengthening old neural pathways. And there's been great studies with neuroplasticity and sort of meditation. They have one study where they found after just 3 weeks of meditation, where people were meditating for about 10 minutes a day, they found that after just 3 weeks, the people were more calm, more relaxed. So they were strengthening, those neural pathways in the brain. And after, I think it was a full 11 hours of meditation over combined periods of weeks and months, they found that the brain was significantly restructuring itself. So new neuron, connections between different parts of the brain.
And for those at home who maybe don't understand how you create these programs, how do you create these programs when you've got your machine and you step into a place of consciousness thing and get these programs? How does that work in layman's terms?
It's a mixture of a lot of research as well as intuition. So we have what's called a sequence editor that we've developed for the light that can be used for Windows or Mac. So we've got it all laid out. It's very simple for people. You can just get in there. You can play around with the different frequencies. There's sliders, and you put numbers in, and then suddenly the light will start doing what you tell it to do. So it's very straightforward. It's learning about the different brainwave states, learning about which ones are good, which ones you really want to steer away from, and then it's experimentation. So before we would put a new program out into the world, because we currently have about 300 people who own this light worldwide. Before we would give it to our user community, we tested extensively for 2 or 3 months. So we put a lot of energy into this, and like I said, it's trial and error. It's understanding what brainwave frequencies we want to use, what effect they'll have, and then it's intuition as well to sort of really highly tune these programs.
And are there any dangers with this, Todd?
The dangers are for people who are, let's say, have any sort of mental sort of imbalances like schizophrenia. We've never put anybody with schizophrenia on the light. Nobody bipolar. If you're prone to if you're photosensitive, therefore you're prone to seizures through photic stimulation, so light. So we basically have a health and safety form that we get everyone to fill out before they go in the light. So if you're sensitive to light, as in photosensitive, as in you have seizures, if you're overly sensitive, then no, you can't use the light. And we do our absolute best to screen people to make sure that they're going to have the best experience possible. Although we've been sort of conditioned to be afraid of flickering light, because of some people are prone to seizures, and that's I think it's the 3% of people who are prone to seizures are photosensitive. So it's in comparison to the whole population, it's quite a small portion of the population. And we experience flickering light every single day, including our computers. Our computers are flickering at like 60 hertz, 80 hertz, which is fast enough to where you can't physically see it with your eyes, but your brain can still detect that. And a lot of computers are set to 60 to 80 hertz, for the screen sort of, flicker rate. And, that's not actually a very good frequency. So, we're already, and even the same goes with our TVs. We get flickering light with TVs as well. We get it with the film, with, going to the cinema. And a lot of the times the flicker rate is not a very good flicker rate. It's not a very conducive flicker rate for health. So people are already experiencing it on a regular basis. We just don't know, a lot of people just don't realize that they're exposed to it on a daily basis. So when we educate people on flickering light, we want to help them understand how they're already experiencing it and what they could do to get better experiences, from that exposure.
So taking it back now, Todd, because you do have an amazing story. And for some of those people who are listening who don't know you, take us back. How did you get to this point now where you have your own little hub in London? You've got the Pandora Spa. You're doing your different workshops. What's been your journey over the last, take us from the beginning. How did you get into this? How did you end up at this place where you do this day in, day out and immersing yourself in this?
Age 6. I'm 6 years old. That's the pinpoint for me. I started having lucid dreams. I didn't know that was what they were called, but I knew they were dreams, and I knew I could start, playing in my dreams. I knew I could start exploring in my dreams. And it's one of those things where you think everybody's doing it, so you don't really talk much about it because you just assume people are doing it. And when they refer to their dreams, go on.
And for anyone listening, Todd, who maybe is going through the same experience, how do you know you're lucid dreaming?
Okay, so a lucid dream is when you're in a dream, whereas a typical unconscious dream, you're not aware that you're dreaming. And you might, even if you have a little bit of awareness, you may not have enough to actually do something, with it. And I find this is the most, important part of the process is learning to become lucid and conscious within the dream. So technically, your physical body is asleep. To all intents and purposes, if somebody was sat next to you, watching you while you were sleeping, they would think you were completely unconscious. But within a lucid dream state, which is an amazing experience, you are fully aware that you are still in bed, your body is asleep, and you are awake within a dream. And when that happens, depending on the level of lucidity that you can achieve, the actual dream environment can take on a hyper definition. It can become actually more physically real than waking reality. And I do mean physically as in physicality. It's a mental state. It's a mental construct. And I personally believe, with all the research that I've done on including multidimensional reality, simulation sort of hypothesis, I personally believe that we are living within a virtual reality system which is being programmed from another dimensional level of consciousness. When you start having lucid dreams, and I'll get back to the age 6 in a second, because I'm kind of just sort of going forward very quickly now.
Yeah, dude, I'm loaded with questions, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll just step back really quickly and then we'll get back into that. So age 6, I started having lucid dreams, and it just literally started out of nowhere. It was spontaneous. So I would go from having dreams where I might have a little bit of awareness that I was dreaming, but then I'd wake up usually, and I'd realize, I was dreaming. Whereas I then started having this type of dream where I was awake, fully awake in the dream, and I knew it because I could then wake myself up. I taught myself how to wake myself up and then re-enter the dream after being awake for a period of time again. So, what would be called a wake-induced lucid dream, or a wild. So I really played around with this stuff a lot when I was age 6. And then about 3 months into having these lucid dreams, I started having a second type of experience, which articulating as a 6-year-old was the challenge. I'm now articulating this as an adult. I was having what I would now refer to, and other people would refer to, as an out-of-body experience. So two different types of experience. One, I knew I was dreaming, and the phenomena was usually I would enter that state while asleep, whereas the out-of-body state, the other type of experience I was having, I would literally, if I was asleep, or if I was asleep, I would be brought back to full waking consciousness through some very powerful energy sensations. Or I was already awake on my way to going to sleep, and then I'd have these powerful energy sensations. And when I had those sensations, I would then start, having the feeling of floating away from my bed, and I would then be standing in the middle of my bedroom looking at my physical body lying in bed. So that never happened in the dream state. So the lucid dreams, that never happened. And, when I was in the lucid dream state, I could change things about the scenery very easily, whereas in this other type of experience, which I'm now labeling the out-of-body experience, I couldn't change the scenery, in most cases at all. So I knew there were fundamental differences even at age 6. I just didn't have labels for them. I wasn't able to articulate that stuff as I can now.
So here's a quickly to frame this, Todd. So what's the difference between, I know you've just kind of said this, but just to frame it again, the difference between someone having a lucid dream, realizing they're in the dream, and deciding to go in particular areas of the mind, between that and, for example, I know a lot of people have asked me this, when you've had a dream and you wake up the next morning and it was so real, you think you're still in the dream, okay?
Yeah.
And then those two, and then compared to an out-of-body experience or astral traveling, what can you just kind of give some points, and also between transitioning between each of those?
For sure. Okay, so we've got 3 or 4 different type of phenomena going on here. Is one of the first things that has to really be sort of, we have to be aware of. So we have the regular dream state, which we're usually unconscious to. We have the lucid dream state, where we become conscious while we're still dreaming. We then have what's called false awakenings. False awakenings is when we actually wake up in our bed, under the covers. We think, okay, I'm awake now. Maybe, like me, if you keep a dream journal, you then start to write in your journal. You then put that down, you get up, you start walking around the bedroom, and then you might notice something completely, out of place. Like maybe instead of a rug, which you usually have on your floor, it's bare floorboards. And then you look at the walls and you see, oh, wait a second. This looks a lot like my bedroom, but there are differences. Oh my God, I'm still dreaming. I'm still asleep. And then you wake up again and, oh my God, I thought I woke up for real, but I was still dreaming. That's a false awakening. And that can happen back to back 2 or 3 times sometimes. So literally you can wake up from a false awakening thinking, oh my God, that was so real. The fidelity of the dream state is so convincing that, you think it's your actual house, your actual bedroom. But because you're not lucid enough, you might miss some of the detail that is different at first. But once you notice something, and you may not notice until you've had breakfast and had a shower. You could literally have a shower and dream, eat breakfast in the dream, and then suddenly clock it and like, wait a second, my dining room table is square, not round. Oh my God, I'm still dreaming. And then you wake up under the covers again for the second or third time. So that's a false awakening. And then, of course, the out-of-body state of consciousness, where in majority of cases, you're in a consensus environment. Like London, for example, where I live and work. London is a shared reality space. I share it with 8 million other residents. And my personal will doesn't have a huge influence on the collective will, because I've got all that other willpower working against mine. So changing things is usually done in a very personal sort of manner. Whereas in a lucid dream state, because it's a personal mental construct, you can change it at will. You can get the dream characters. You can change their clothing. You can communicate with them, and all kinds of stuff can happen in the lucid dream state. So when things are highly changeable, it's typically a dream state. When things are not so changeable and very physically real, that could be a lucid. It could be a false awakening, and a false awakening, is kind of like, I almost see as being sort of layers of potential or probable worlds. Where science talks about, things like, infinite worlds. This, I think, false awakenings, you're literally entering parallel dimensions of reality that are as physically real as this one. And because these are all mental constructs, it's like all these different realities, even dreams, they have their own sort of rule sets. And the rule set, for physicality is just that it will feel like this, it'll feel solid to the touch. You can have different qualities, but these are just rule sets ultimately. So even physicality is just a rule set within a mental construct, because it can be experienced as such in a lucid dream. The evidence is there for everyone to experience. So to me, I think all of reality can be like that, because I can literally wake up from a lucid dream that was just as physically real as physical reality. I can now be lying in my bed, which is now as physically real as the dream just was. I can then realize, I maybe pick up my dream journal and go, oh my God, which I've had happen several times. This is not my journal. Whose journal is this? And then I realize I'm still in a dream or a parallel reality, and it's just as physical as the lucid dream I just woke up from. I then might use a special out-of-body command to wake myself back to my physical body and physical reality. My grounded reality, and what I consider grounded reality, is the reality where I spend my waking life. Okay, so I'm now back in grounded reality, which is now as physically real as the parallel dimension world that I just experienced, and further to that, the lucid dream world that I experienced prior to that. And they were all as physically real as each other. So, I think there is evidence that, lucid dreaming is very good evidence that we could be living in a virtual world, because a lucid dream is a personal virtual reality space.
Do you know what, Todd? You have actually brought some clarity on some stuff that because every time, I think I've had this conversation with you a couple of times briefly, every time I've tried to do lucid dreaming or out-of-body experiences, all that would happen is I'd end up going into past lives, I'd end up going to other universes, parallel universes, and losing a lot of sleep, getting completely confused, and ultimately waking up, having integrated a lot of stuff. Like, I get a lot of realizations, but the whole kind of lucid dreaming or out-of-body experience never really happened for me, So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So for people listening, Actually, let's go back to your story, Todd. Go back to your story, and then I'll hit with questions.
Right. So age 6, I started having both those experiences in tandem, and I usually got to a point where I could move from one to the other. So I could go from a lucid dream into the out-of-body state. At first, I was having assistance. So I would notice in a dream, for example, one of the dream characters seemed to have a little bit more independence about it. It seemed to have a little bit more than just being a plastic sort of character of my subconscious. And then those same characters would sort of reappear in other dream states, and they were teaching me stuff, and they were teaching me how I could move between one of these realities to another reality. They would assist me, and then I would be in one of these consensus environments, which was a real place beyond my mind. I didn't need to focus on it for it to be there, such as like a dream. When we wake up from a dream, the dream will dissipate, will collapse in most cases. They're thought forms. And thought forms that haven't had a lot of energy given to them through sustained thought, such as, when we worry about the same thing a lot, we actually create thought forms in our energy field, and they're sustainable that way. And though we don't really want, worrisome thought forms in our energy field, we all create these things. Every thought creates form on some level of reality. So I was then being taught, at that young age about how to move to these different states. And I'd meet some of the same people. Sometimes I'd meet other children, and we'd be sort of taken to different environments to where we would then learn stuff. So like Whitley Strieber used to talk about in his books about like secret schools that would be taking place at night while we were sleeping, which was quite fascinating to have. So this journey went on until I was around age 12, when suddenly all this stuff just came to a complete stop. No more lucid dreams, no more out-of-body experiences. And I think, it could have been a mixture of stuff. It could have been hormones from puberty. It could have been the fact that, at school, I was very marginalized because I was so different. I wasn't trying to be so different. I just was. And other children picked up on it very, very easily. It's just something you can hide when that's who you are. So I'd have lunch on my own. I'd sit at the playground on my own. And so my development was at risk, if you like. And I think it might be the case that higher consciousness, we might refer in spirituality to guides or higher self. Any agent in the universe might have looked at that and thought, what, let's close down these windows at the moment because they're interfering with his physical life experience. And then, of course, after that, I did start to integrate better, which was interesting.
And in terms of like all of this you were doing just for your own experiences, Todd, and I'm sure you've seen it, a lot of youngsters under the age of 10 are having these experiences and then it gets shut down. So you think it's purely just so that they can go for their physical experiences? I've had this question, and I was actually chatting to someone yesterday, and he was very much like, is there a way of me shortcutting so I don't have to have my physical experiences, so I can just get to that place where I'm just out of my body all the time and just in that place and not have to go through my lessons?
Right. Well, just for clarity, I'm not saying that we have to close that, my experiences had to be closed down. Just didn't have the support necessary within my physical life for it to actually be something that was beneficial, because I wasn't coping very well. If I was coping better, it probably wouldn't have been closed off. And that's just a theory, by the way. I don't know if that's exactly what happened. It could have been hormones. It could have been anything. But I would say I've had people come on my workshops with the intent that they wanted to learn how to do this so they can then sort of astral project to the afterlife environments. So they can then choose a reality they wanted and then unhook from their physical body and then stay there. And as I say to people, it doesn't really work that way. And nor should you really want it to work that way. I mean, being in physical reality to me is priceless. It's absolutely a priceless experience. And I can actually remember through my out-of-body experiences that I've now had. I'm 46 years old now, and for the last almost 13 years, I've retaught myself how to have these experiences now as an adult. And I can have them at will. I can lie down and usually 20 or 30 minutes later, I'm out of my body. And, the thing that I've discovered is that in these other environments, there are literally, people waiting to enter these realities, and they're going into training simulations on other realities, other virtual reality systems within their own grounded realities, in the afterlife, training for this level of reality, environments which are as physically real as this environment, while they're now being their astral body and their newly forming etheric body is being interconnected with their physical body that's growing in their mother's womb. And they can go between the womb, and they can go between their current astral residence, almost at will during that stage. And after interviewing people in that interlife state while I'm out of body myself, the excitement levels are usually off the chart. They don't see it as a burdensome place that they have to come to get a certain level of experience before they could leave it. And make no mistake, the environment that they're currently living in before coming here is just as physically real as this one. The way I now see this through 13 years of, almost 13 years of exploration is that the universe itself is the multiverse is one big frequency domain. And then you have like the astral planes and the physical earth plane, which, after this big frequency domain was created, it was like a space domain was created within that. And then just like our telecoms companies, for mobile phones, our TV broadcast companies, radio broadcast companies, they've all agreed to use specific frequencies, unique frequencies within a frequency spectrum. So although they're all jumbled in the air around us, if you like, in the ethers around us, occupying the same space, they're on a unique frequency. So therefore it doesn't get jumbled. And I think multidimensional reality is exactly like that. So the astral planes are a physical reality like ours because it has a similar rule set that says physical reality feels solid and real, but it is a mental state. Make no mistake, in my mind, that's how I see it. And physical Earth is exactly the same way. It's just they're in different time domains. So you can have all these different time domains within the space domain, within the frequency domain, and they're all just like, our radio waves, TV signals, Wi-Fi signals. They're occupying exactly the same frequency states, but they're all in a distinct, they're all distinct within a frequency domain. So the larger frequency domain, they're distinct within that. And the astral plane is no different from the physical earth plane. It's just using a distinct frequency, but it's using a similar rule set. So these places are just as physical. Yes, they might be more thought responsive, some of them, but that's only because the rule set for those particular environments. The astral planes, it's like, oh my God, it's like endless subplanes within this bigger plane. You could be talking about potentially millions of subplanes. And the way that I've now come to see this is that whatever mindset we have here, whatever the fear mind, whatever the state the fear mind is in, whatever internal vibration has been sort of calculated based on this algorithm of our belief systems, the way that we think, what we could call our karma, all of our actions based on, cause and effect. It's like all these numbers are crunched together in this algorithm that will then place you in a particular domain in the afterlife based on that algorithm. And that's like for like is what I'm saying. People think they're just going to escape this reality, if it's a really low quality, poor experience they're having, and they're just going to suddenly go to some heavenly environments where they can escape their mortal life. It doesn't happen that way. It really doesn't happen that way. I'm not saying people who have a poor quality experience are going to just, sort of go to a poor quality environment. But, there's a lot of old expressions like, wherever you go, there you are. If you haven't changed, you're going to basically be walking down the same road or a road that looks exactly like that road.
I love it. And one thing I want to ask, Todd, because you've mentioned it a few times. When you say you say that reality is a mental state, this reality is a mental state. What do you mean exactly by that? Do you mean that there
is no physical reality anywhere? All reality is within the actual reality of your consciousness. There is no physical place anywhere.
Okay, cool.
It's all just a mental construct. It's if you're having lucid dreams and you know how physically real they are, how is that happening? You have to ask yourself that question. How is that possible if this is just a chemical process, for starters? If you look at this from a scientific perspective, the current status quo, they think it's a chemical process in the brain, and consciousness is a epiphenomena, byproduct of the brain. How on earth is something as physically real. A dream can become as physically real as our waking reality. How's that possible? They have no explanation for that.
So going even deeper, Todd, before we kind of touch on more some of the basic protocols, going even deeper, how far have you seen, should we say, like where have you got to in terms of this is what it's all about? This, once I've gone through this life and achieved X, Y, and Z, I will then get taken to here. And how far up have you seen and what, because a lot of people, obviously, as you know, in this space get caught up in the why rather than just being the experience.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I think we do get caught up in our belief systems for starters. We all do. And I think, to me, it's getting to a point to where you're having a direct experience. And to me, this is what reality basically is about. It's about having the experience of what chocolate tastes like versus just thinking about what chocolate might taste like. And then expanding that out onto every possible experience you could imagine having within this level of reality, in that same way. It's like being writing the script for a play and then acting out that play. It's about the raw experience. And that's what it seems like that the universe at large is doing. It's creating opportunities for experience so it can learn more about itself. And we are all independent agents within this interdependent system, this interconnected system, which is learning about itself. And I think, we can get sort of trapped in loops where we're relearning the same painful things over and over and over. I don't think, that the universe, has, a crisis of consciousness or is sadistic. I think, we have free will. And we use that free will sometimes in low quality ways, and we can literally trap ourselves within our own belief systems. We can get belief system blindness, and we may not see a bigger reality in front of us. We may not see, that we literally cut ourselves off from the source of reality, which is, to me, from what I've experienced, a very loving thing. To me, the universe seems to be, kind towards us. It's just that, like the false self that we talk about in spirituality, which is the ego, it's the fear mind, and it's literally cut itself off from the reality of love. And so to me, from my perspective, I'm not going to say that the source of reality is love, because I don't personally know that. I know that the sources of, this reality, as in the Earth life system, which is physical reality as we know it, the high frequency physical realities of the astral planes, the higher frequency realities of, the higher planes of consciousness, the soul plane, all these other levels. And I'm attaching a few labels to stuff, and please, nobody needs to get caught up in labels. I'm just sort of applying, ideas here and there, metaphors, if you like, so we can maybe have something to attach to, through ideas. But they're just metaphors, and I don't think anybody has the best metaphors. They're just our way of describing reality. And once we start believing our metaphors, then we really get screwed up. That's when we start getting trapped in the belief systems. So I think it's learning to have like an open-minded skepticism, have a good dose of, good sense of humor, because you're going to need it. When you start having these true, like a true explorer, like a truth seeker, you're open to experiences, and through the experience, through having that direct experience, that will start to shift your belief systems naturally. So this is why I think it's so important to teach from a place of, giving people tools and then standing back and letting them explore on their, with those tools in their own way, because it is ultimately, there's nothing I can say that will change somebody's mind. The only thing that's going to change them is their own direct experience. Yeah,
agreed 100%. So Todd, going back to your story, when did you decide, actually, I'm going to get back into this? Was there like an awakening? Was there some pain? Was there some kind of OB experience? Or what 13 years ago, what happened for you to get back into this and you decided to immerse yourself in this?
It was UFOs.
Okay.
Aliens.
They made you do it.
They made me do it. What I mean by that is I started reading a lot of, there was a magazine back in the 1990s called UFO Magazine. And I was really into the paranormal stuff. I didn't know what the paranormal was. I didn't know, as an adult. I was in my 20s then, and I didn't really know what that was. I now know the paranormal is just an artifact of a much bigger domain of consciousness. It's just this edge reality between physical earth plane and the intermediate levels, that are between the earth and what you would call the astral planes. And I don't mean between as in these realities are stacked. I literally do see this as if you have something like a prism, and then you put, you sort of shine white light through it, and then you get all the colors of the rainbow. All of reality is occupying the same space. Like I said, they're just in their own individual time domains, but they're occupying the same space, just like the Wi-Fi signals and TV signals all around us right now, all in the same space. So I started reading UFO Magazine back in the 90s. It really had my interest because as a child, I had some very interesting out-of-body experiences that led me to believe that some of the contact I was having while out of body was with non-human intelligences. So ET. Some of the beings that I was meeting did not have a human form. They were quite different. And so, as a young adult, no longer having these experiences, I had to get my information from somewhere. So I was very into UFO Magazine, which is no longer available. The guy behind it, the publisher, died over a decade ago. But it really drew me back into this reality of multidimensional reality, interdimensional travel, interdimensional beings. And for a good decade, I studied this stuff from a physical perspective. I researched everything I could. I would go out, stargazing. I would go and check out crop circles and wonder how they were being formed and all this stuff. And it was a lot of interest. And then I found that the Monroe Institute in the U.S., who do a home study course called the Gateway Experience, which is 18 CDs using binaural sound. I decided, hey, I'm going to get that because a lot of people online were talking about how they were having out-of-body experiences because of it. So I thought, I'm pretty sure that's what I was having as a child. I'd like some more of that. So I purchased these CDs. They were delivered to me. It was really exciting. I remember opening the box and reading the information, and a year later, after using these tools, the binaural sound and their techniques, I started having experiences. It took me a year. I don't think it needs to take the average person a year. It just, the tools that they were offering, it was most of the sound technology. You still needed tools beyond that. And I didn't learn additional tools until a year later. But once I started using the additional tools that I got from another source and combined them with the sound technology, suddenly I was taken off. And I was having regular experiences. I remember when it did start happening again, it was within 2 weeks of having the first experience, conscious experience as an adult. I had something like, I think it was 5, 6, 7, 8 fully conscious out-of-body experiences within about a 2-week period. And then I was just as if I'd reached a certain energy threshold and nothing could hold me back. And so that then began my adult journey, and that was around age 34, 35. And ever since, I've just been pushing boundaries, then developed, my business partner, Jimmy, who's the engineer, developed the light. We started doing the programming side of it, creating programs based on, out-of-body exploration, lucid dreaming, deep meditation, remote viewing, everything I'd been practicing up to date because we were both really, into the same stuff. Jimmy actually came to one of my weekend out-of-body, astral projection workshops. And that's where he really got, sort of the bug for this stuff. And then he built the light.
As I'm sure you agree, that was epicness personified. That's what I love about Todd. Everything that he's sharing, he has split tested, he has tested, he's looked into the science, he has pushed himself physically, energetically, emotionally, mentally as far as he can go before he actually shares it and says, this is what I feel, this is what I've experienced, this is what I feel is true to me. So if you have any questions, be sure to check him out on Facebook, Todd Acamesis, Acamesis, or connect with me on Facebook, Duke Sayer, Duke Sayer. And of course, you have his website, Pandora Spa. Just type it in on Google. It will come up. Look forward to seeing you on part 2. Be sure to head on over to iTunes. Leave us a review. Let us know what you got from this episode. Subscribe to the channel so that part 2 comes your way. And I look forward to connecting with you guys then tomorrow for part 2. It's going to be epic. He goes in deeper. He goes juicier with his own experiences of how far he's pushed it, the furthest echelons of reality that he's seen and what he feels to be true of this experience we call life. Look forward to seeing you then.